Hey kids, Tavi Rider here. I'd like to take you on a behind-the-scenes tour of the dispenser side of my minecart station version 2.1. First, a quick review of how it works. You press the button, you get your minecart immediately, drops right into place. To fill it up with more minecarts, you just drop it in the dispenser deposit slot, and if the dispenser's full, then your extra minecart comes right back out again in the minecart return. Very fast and simple, not really complicated, not a lot of explaining to do. So let me show you the inside. This is authorized personnel, okay? You guys are going to be cool, alright? Don't get me in trouble here. So, by the way, my usual double doors, button on the outside, pressure plate on the inside, very handy for keeping out bad things, getting in and out easily. We have a store of replacement parts and equipment. Sometimes glowstone burns out, so if you need some spare pieces there, or if someone breaks some glass, you can just replace it very easy. We have a chest full of safety equipment, and well, this is a very dangerous area, okay? If we're in there and someone presses the button on the outside, we can get run over by a minecart or hurt by the live redstone. And, oh, hard hat, yeah. No exceptions. Okay. So let's go in here and take a look. This is the deposit slot. This is the return slot. And then up on top here, this is where the minecarts go out. And you can see that this is actually pretty deep here. There's a lot going on down in there. Minecarts moved around and signals changing, and it's actually pretty cramped. And I don't think I can show you what's going on in there very effectively. So let me instead go outside and show you where I've duplicated the mechanism. And I've done it in a way that I show step by step how I built it up. That one on the end is the complete section that shows you the full size of the dispenser. But here's the basic part, and I'm going to build this up piece by piece. So first of all, the dispenser is a PEZ dispenser, which means you have minecarts stacked on top of each other vertically. It's a nice dense way to store a lot of minecarts, and you can make this much taller and store a lot more minecarts if you want. The key part of a PEZ dispenser is you have some mechanism for releasing just one minecart at a time. In this case, we're using a hatch, which I think is the least glitchy way to do it. And the way that we use the hatch to dispense one at a time, this is actually a great little circuit from Minecraft Addict. Press the button, and it will turn off this torch, which makes the hatch close. But there's also another torch hidden right in there. Maybe you can see it right between the... There we go. You can see that torch right in the crosshairs between these two minecarts. So when this torch goes off, this one is allowed to come on an instant later, and that makes the hatch open again. So in effect, the hatch just opens and closes really quickly, and this is what you get. And then the minecart hits the ground, spirals up here, goes across the top, and then this is the dispensing spot. This is where the player is. I should point out that this entire thing is mostly below ground. Right at about here is ground level, so most of the PEZ dispensers below. And so let me point out some things about this. Loading it is very easy. Let me get a stack of minecarts. You just drop them in, and you can drop them in fairly quickly, and they just fall right on top of the stack. Dispensing them you already saw, although there is one drawback that when you dispense it, I'm going to press it from up here now, you have to wait for that minecart to spiral all the way up to the top again. There's also a minor problem that you don't know when the dispenser is empty. That's kind of a hard thing to figure out because down here there's no place to put a pressure plate or a detector rail or something like that. There's no way to know if this is empty. So the next step is to solve both of those problems at once. And I've added on all of this green wool here, this circuitry, a little bit more powered rail and such, and this section on top. And let me show how this works. So this is what I call a staging dispenser. It is immediately before the spot where the minecart comes out, and when I press the button to dispense, it immediately gives you your cart, and then while you wait, or in the meantime, the minecart comes up from the bottom of the PEZ dispenser and enters the staging area. Now this staging dispenser just holds one cart. it has an RS NOR latch here. These two torches form the heart of the RS NOR latch, and that keeps track of whether there is a minecart in this position, whether there's one queued up and ready to go. So when I press this button, the two torches are going to change state, and then you'll see that they power this powered rail to push the minecart out, and then when this arrives, everything changes state back again. So now this dispenser thinks that it has a minecart again, and that works fine. You can use that for an indicator. Let me throw one on here. If you wanted to, you can have an indicator that says, is there a minecart ready to go for your dispenser? Now, I chose not to do that in my actual design of the minecart station because I didn't want to have a torch added on to the design that had to have a sign next to it explaining what it meant. I instead went with, if you press the button and you don't get a minecart, obviously the dispenser's empty. So, but some people would prefer an indicator, so it is very easy to add on. You just add it on to that spot right there. Now there's one tricky part about this, and that is, imagine for a moment that the dispenser is completely empty. As a matter of fact, I just have to hit the button a couple of times. I'll empty it out right now. So that one's coming up from the bottom. And now staged, and I press it again. Oops, didn't hit. There we go. So now the dispenser is empty. So with that design, if I put a minecart in, it would go around here, and it would go into the Pez dispenser and drop down to the bottom. And at that point, with one minecart in the bottom, if you press the dispense button, that minecart is going to spiral back up again and then stop in the staging dispenser. So effectively, you would press the button and not get a minecart. So instead, I have this intersection right here. This controls whether the minecart, when it's deposited, goes into the Pez dispenser, or if it goes up and around here and into the staging dispenser. So right now, the entire system is empty, and so the intersection is set up so that when I deposit a cart, it goes straight into the staging dispenser. Now when I put another minecart in, it drops down into the Pez dispenser. And that's because the RS NOR latch, the signal wraps around here, goes around here, underneath, and controls that intersection directly, right there. So that makes sure that when you deposit a minecart, it goes to the correct one of these two dispensers. It's a kind of a necessary step if you're going to have a staging dispenser. There's one other neat trick about this setup, and this one really just came out by chance that it worked out so well. Just a second. There we go. So, imagine for a minute that we have the dispenser. Let's throw a couple more carts in here just for testing. Now, I press the button, I get my minecart, and so the staging dispenser is empty and there's a minecart spiraling up. Imagine if at that point I dispensed another cart, if I press that button again. Well, I can show you what happens. I've sort of wired up something directly to the Pez dispenser. If you get a second one that's on its way, it's going to run into the first one on the staging dispenser. And this is a problem. These minecarts are going to stick and the entire mechanism is going to stop working. So if I remove this, so we have to make sure that we don't ever push two minecarts out of the Pez dispenser and going up this spiral at the same time. Well, there's a lucky thing that works out here. When I press this button, the RS NOR latch powers that input line constantly until finally a minecart arrives. So if I press that button twice, nothing's going to happen. It's not making any difference because the line's already powered. Only once a minecart arrives can I press that button again. So it's protection against someone flooding the system by pressing the button multiple times. Just worked out very simply that I didn't have to do anything to do that. Okay, so that solves detecting whether the dispenser is empty, and it solves dispensing very, very quickly. You also get an indicator. The next problem is detecting when the dispenser is full. And that one I added on a fair bit more. Actually, let me show you this mock-up first. Let me show you some of the problems. First of all, this is a system that a lot of people have used. I have what is effectively a full Pez dispenser. It's right up to the top. Actually, let me knock this top one off and show you. You put in one more, it just sits there. Great. Now, this is effectively full. If I drop in one more cart, it just runs into this first one and stops. This is the east-west collision bug. When you have minecarts going from east to west, you can see the sun is rising in the east there. If it's going east to west and two minecarts run into each other, they just stop. This is a problem. North-south, you can get away with this better behavior, that they bounce off of each other. So if I were to dispense a cart, this one would drop down and this one would fill in. Fine. But that doesn't tell us whether the dispenser is actually full. You need to get some redstone signal out of this to know whether it's actually full. So let me knock off that one piece of track and instead put in a detector rail. Well, if I put the minecart on there, the detector rail is going to just stop the cart dead. And so we don't get our signal, or, well, actually we do get our signal that says it's full, but then it will never fix itself. It'll just be on forever. So what I did instead was this. We have the full Pez dispenser, and let me deposit another cart. And it runs around in here, it drops down, and it starts bouncing off of that one and up this slope. So we have a sloped piece of powered rail and a sloped detector rail, and this is the signal we get out of it. So that works pretty well. It's not exactly a clean signal, it's flashing on and off again. So if you pass it through this set of 3 lines of redstone repeaters, this one has shortest delay, this one with a couple extra ticks, and then this, I think this is a total of 5 ticks here. So if you pass this flashing line through all of these, you end up with a single steady on line. And then you pass that through here, and this is our indicator of whether the dispenser is full. If I dispense a cart, a moment later, the indicator goes off. And if I add another cart, it's back on again. Nice and quick. It's not instant, but it is surprisingly quick. So that gets us our detector for if the dispenser is full, and that also gives us a chance to route extra carts that the player deposits. So since the dispenser was full, it went right back out to this other death cactus over here. That would have been the minecart return slot. And if we dispense one, you can see a few moments later this intersection turns back again. And so now if I deposit another cart, it will instead go on top of the dispenser. That works pretty well. That's a new thing. I haven't seen anyone else implement a Pez dispenser full detector quite that way. You could have another indicator light. Like I said before, I decided not to use indicator lights, but if you wanted to, you could simply run redstone off of this and you would have your indicator light to say that the dispenser is full. So that's the basic functionality of this. There's a couple other things that I wanted to point out that are kind of nice about this. It is a relatively robust system. If you drop an extra minecart into different places, it'll work out fairly well. For instance, if you somehow get an extra minecart into here, most of the time, not every time, but most of the time, you'll get this behavior where the indicator is still correct and the minecarts are still bouncing around, and if we dispense, it will fix itself and you'll go back to a still full Pez dispenser. Just in general, I have a lot of those kinds of redundancies set up. If a minecart gets going down the wrong way on the spiral, it will hit this dead end, turn around, come back up again. So if someone's standing in the way when it dispenses, it should repair itself. There's also a very rare case. Let me see if I can show you. It might take a couple of tries. There's a very rare case where this minecart that is bouncing up and down will stall. I think it's right about then. I got it on the first try. Okay. So if you happen to dispense at just the wrong moment, you'll see that this minecart sticks on the edge. And if I hit the dispense button again, the Pez dispenser will keep emptying, but this minecart sits on the ledge. This seems like a problem, but as it turns out, it's just fine. It just means there's a minecart in the middle of the system. The moment we deposit another minecart, it comes down here, bumps into that one and nudges it onto the top of the Pez dispenser, and then that one falls in place. So there's a lot of that kind of resiliency in this. It's kind of hard to explain all the places where that happens, but it is a pretty robust system. I think I've shown the only cases I know of where the system will really actually break. That's if you get an extra minecart up here and they collide because of that east-west collision thing. And there are also occasional race conditions, like if you deposit carts really, really quickly, they'll get through this intersection in time, especially if the minecart dispenser is entirely empty. But those are rare. You don't tend to get people really hammering trying to break a dispenser like this. And in the worst case where you do get a pile of minecarts, you do have your privileged access through the back door. So that's everything I wanted to show you. Thanks for watching. Oh, and this is, of course, the full version. You can see the shape of the entire thing. It is kind of big. It is kind of oddly shaped, but since most of this goes underground, you can end up with just a nice, neat little building above ground that works out pretty well. Okay, that's it. If you have any improvements to this, if you have any questions, I'd love to hear it. Just post on this video. In my next video, I'll show the secret of the orange line, and you should also look forward to some RDF creations that I've been looking forward to showing you. So, thanks for watching.